I was pulling into my driveway after a long day supervising construction sites when I saw it. A brand new wooden fence blocking the dirt road that led to my property. My jaw dropped as I slammed on the brakes, gravel crunching under my tires. This road had been here for decades, long before the fancy Meadowbrook Estates subdivision sprouted up next to my 10 acres in rural Georgia. My name is Zachary Zimmerman, and I had bought this property 5 years ago specifically because it was outside city limits, away from all the bureaucratic nonsense. The land sat on the outskirts of Marietta, Georgia, where I could have space, privacy, and no one telling me what color I could paint my shed. Now, apparently, someone thought they had the right to fence off my only access road. I threw my truck into park and got out, walking up to the fence. It was solid construction, about 6 feet tall, with a locked gate and a shiny new sign that read, "Meadowbrook Estates Private Property, No Trespassing." My blood pressure spiked as I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed on the sign for the Homeowners Association. Meadowbrook Estates HOA, this is Brenda speaking. How may I help you? The voice was chipper, almost aggressively pleasant. Yeah, hi, my name is Zachary Zimmerman, and your association just blocked off my only road access to my property. I need this fence removed immediately. There was a pause. Oh, you must be the owner of that old property. Well, sir, that road runs through HOA property now. We had every right to secure our community. Excuse me? I have a legal easement on that road. It is documented in my property deed. You cannot just block it off. Sir, I suggest you take that up with our board president, Karen Whitmore. She handles all property disputes. I can give you her number. I wrote down the number, my hand shaking with anger. This was exactly the kind of power-tripping nonsense I had moved out here to avoid. After hanging up, I immediately called Karen Whitmore. This is Karen. Her voice was clipped, businesslike, with an edge that suggested she was used to getting her way. Ms. Whitmore, this is Zachary Zimmerman. Your HOA just erected a fence that blocks my only road access. I have a legal easement, and I need that fence removed today. Mr. Zimmerman, I am well aware of your situation. That road runs through property that is now part of Meadowbrook Estates. We have over 200 homeowners here who pay substantial HOA fees for security and privacy. We cannot have random people driving through our community. Random people? I own the property at the end of that road. I have owned it for 5 years. My deed specifically grants me easement rights. Your supposed easement is from 1987. Things have changed. If you want access, you will need to petition the board, attend our next meeting, and we will consider alternative arrangements, perhaps a back entrance from County Road 12. County Road 12 is 3 miles of undeveloped forest away from my property. That is completely unreasonable. Those are your options. Mr. Zimmerman, good day. She hung up. I stood there staring at my phone, unable to believe what had just happened. This woman had actually cut off my legal access and acted like I was the problem. I took a deep breath and called my lawyer, Doug Patterson, who I had used for the property purchase. Doug, we have a problem. After explaining the situation, Doug was quiet for a moment. Zachary, they cannot do that. Your easement is clearly documented and runs with the land. It does not matter what the HOA wants. I will draft a cease and desist letter immediately and send it certified mail. In the meantime, document everything. Take photos, videos, the whole 9 yards. I spent the next hour photographing the fence from every angle, the signs and the locked gate. I even drove around to County Road 12 to see if there was any possible alternative access. Doug was right. It was completely undeveloped, thick with Georgia pine and underbrush. It would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a road through there, assuming I could even get the permits. That night, I pulled out my property survey and deed. Sure enough, there it was in black and white, a permanent easement for ingress and egress along the existing dirt road, originally established in 1987 when the property was subdivided from a larger parcel. The easement was 30 feet wide and clearly marked on the survey. But as I studied the documents more carefully, I noticed something interesting. My property bordered the northern edge of what was now Meadowbrook Estates, and according to the survey, there were utility easements running across my land too. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside, walking the northern boundary of my property. It took me about 20 minutes of searching in the dark, but I found it. A manhole cover with sewer embossed on top, sitting right in the middle of my back pasture. I walked further and found 2 more. According to my survey, these were on my property, not on the easements. Someone had built a sewer line across my land, probably when they developed Meadowbrook Estates. A slow grin spread across my face. If they wanted to play games with easements, I could play too. The next morning, I called Doug again. I need you to research something. I have 3 sewer manholes on my property that I think service the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision. They are not on any recorded easements on my deed. Doug whistled. Now that's interesting. If they build a sewer line across your property without getting a proper easement, they are trespassing, and more importantly, you could potentially deny them access to maintain it. Let me pull the county records and see what I can find. While Doug researched, I drove to the county courthouse to file a complaint about the blocked road. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Phyllis, took my information and explained that code enforcement would investigate within 5 business days. 5 days? I cannot get to my house for 5 days? Sir, you are not the first person to have issues with Meadowbrook Estates HOA. They have been very aggressive about their property rights, but if you have a legal easement, they are in violation. The county will make them remove the fence, but these things take time. What am I supposed to do in the meantime? I live on that property. Phyllis leaned forward conspiratorially. Between you and me, if it were my property and my legal easement, I would remove the fence myself. You have every right to access your land. Just document everything in case they try to claim vandalism. I nodded slowly. She was right. This was my legal access, and I had every right to use it. I drove to Home Depot and bought a heavy-duty bolt cutter. Then I went back to the fence, took more photos and videos clearly showing the gate blocking my easement, and cut the lock. I opened the gate, drove through, and continued to my property. I did not remove the fence, just made sure I could access my land. My phone started ringing within an hour. It was Karen Whitmore, and she was furious. Mr. Zimmerman, you have vandalized HOA property. I have called the sheriff, and you will be arrested for destruction of property. Ms. Whitmore, I have a legal easement. You blocked my only access to my home. I have every right to use that road, and I documented everything before removing your illegal gate lock. I did not damage the fence, just the lock that was preventing me from accessing my property. That gate cost the HOA $3,000. Then you wasted $3,000 putting it on my easement. Now, while I have you on the phone, let's talk about the sewer line running across my property. There was a pause. What sewer line? The one that services your entire subdivision, the one that crosses my property without any recorded easement. I found 3 manholes on my land last night. My lawyer is researching the county records right now, but I'm pretty sure you're going to find that whoever built Meadowbrook Estates did not bother getting permission to run that sewer across my property. Another pause, longer this time. I will have to look into that. You do that. And Karen, every day that fence blocks my access, I am documenting it for my lawsuit. My lawyer has already sent you a cease and desist letter. I suggest you read it carefully. I hung up, feeling a surge of satisfaction. 2 could play the property rights game. Doug called back that afternoon with news. Zachary, you are not going to believe this. I pulled the development records for Meadowbrook Estates. The sewer line absolutely runs across your property, and there is no recorded easement for it. What happened was the developer, a company called Prestige Homes, built the subdivision in 2018. They ran the sewer line across what they thought was part of the development land, but they miscalculated the property boundary. Your property line extends further south than they realized. So they are trespassing? Not just trespassing, they built permanent infrastructure on your land without permission. That is a big deal. The HOA took over responsibility for all common elements when the development was turned over to them in 2020, which means they are now responsible for maintaining that sewer line. But they do not have the legal right to access it. What are my options? Well, you could sue for trespass and demand they remove the sewer line, but that would cost them millions and create a nightmare for 200 homeowners. More realistically, you can demand they pay you for a proper easement. Given the circumstances, you have tremendous leverage. I would ask for at least $50,000 plus legal fees and a guaranteed permanent easement for your road access. Make it $75,000, Doug laughed. I like how you think. Let me draft a letter. That evening, as I was making dinner, I heard vehicles approaching. I looked out to see a Cobb County Sheriff's cruiser pulling up, followed by Karen Whitmore in a white Mercedes SUV. I walked outside to meet them. The deputy, a young guy named Rodriguez according to his name tag, approached me. "Are you Zachary Zimmerman?" "I am." "Sir, we have a complaint that you vandalized HOA property. Specifically, you cut a lock on a gate." "Deputy, I own this property. That gate was blocking a legal easement that grants me access to my land. I have the deed and survey right inside if you want to see them." Karen had gotten out of her Mercedes and was marching toward us. She was exactly what I had pictured. Mid-50s, blonde hair in a tight bob, wearing expensive athleisure wear, and oversized sunglasses even though the sun was setting. "Officer, this man has been harassing the HOA and destroyed our property." "Madam, please let me handle this," Rodriguez said calmly. He turned back to me. "Can I see those documents, sir?" I went inside and grabbed my deed, survey, and the photos I had taken. Rodriguez studied them carefully while Karen fidgeted impatiently. "Mr. Zimmerman, this easement appears to be legitimate. The gate is clearly within the easement boundaries." He turned to Karen. "Madam, he has a legal right to access his property. You cannot block a recorded easement." "But that road goes through our neighborhood. We have children playing, people walking their dogs. We cannot have some stranger driving through whenever he wants." "Madam, he is not a stranger. He owns property here, and he has a legal easement. If you have a problem with that, you need to take it up in civil court. But from a criminal standpoint, Mr. Zimmerman has not committed vandalism. He accessed his own property using his legal right-of-way." Karen's face was turning red. "This is ridiculous. I pay taxes. I have rights." "So does Mr. Zimmerman," Rodriguez said firmly. "Now, I suggest you remove that fence from the easement or he can file a complaint with the county. You are the ones in violation here, not him." After they left, Karen peeling out in her Mercedes while giving me a death glare, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. At least law enforcement understood the situation. But Karen was not done. Over the next 2 days, I discovered that she had filed complaints with the county claiming my property was an eyesore and violated various codes. I received citations for having an unlicensed vehicle on my property, which was actually my project car, up on blocks in my garage with the door open. I got another citation for not maintaining proper drainage, despite the fact that there was no drainage problem. Each citation came with a notice that I needed to appear before the county code board. Doug advised me to fight every single one. "They are harassing you. Document all of this for the lawsuit." Meanwhile, Doug sent his letter to the HOA demanding $75,000 for the sewer easement plus legal fees, immediate removal of the fence blocking my road access, and a written apology. The letter gave them 7 days to respond. 5 days later, I received a response, but not from Karen. It was from the HOA's attorney, a law firm out of Atlanta called Morrison & Chen. The letter was professionally written, but essentially told me to go pound sand. They claimed that the sewer line had been there for over 7 years and thus had established a prescriptive easement through adverse use. They also claimed my road easement was ambiguous and subject to reasonable restrictions for community safety. Doug read the letter and shook his head. "This is garbage. Prescriptive easements require open and notorious use, meaning you should have known about it. Did you know about the sewer line when you bought the property?" "No, it was not disclosed and the manholes are hidden in tall grass. I only found them when I went looking." "Then there is no prescriptive easement, and your road easement is not ambiguous at all. It is clearly marked on the recorded survey. They are bluffing." Doug leaned back in his chair. "Zachary, I think we need to file suit. This is not going to be resolved with letters." "Do it." Doug filed a lawsuit in Cobb County Superior Court the next week, asking for declaratory judgment on both easements, $75,000 in damages for the illegal sewer line, removal of the fence, legal fees, and punitive damages for harassment. We also filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to force removal of the fence pending trial. The HOA responded by holding an emergency board meeting and sending a letter to all Meadowbrook Estates homeowners, claiming that a hostile neighbor was trying to extort money from the community and threatening their property values. Karen included my name and described me as running a junkyard on my property, which was absolute nonsense. My property was well maintained with a nice house, a barn, and pasture land. I started getting angry phone calls and messages from Meadowbrook residents I had never met, accusing me of trying to ruin their neighborhood. Someone drove by my property and threw eggs at my mailbox. Another night, I heard noise outside and found teenagers trying to vandalize my fence, spray painting "Go away" before I chased them off and called the sheriff. Rodriguez responded again, and I showed him the footage from my security camera. He recognized one of the kids. That is Marcus Chen. He lives in Meadowbrook. I will have a talk with him and his parents. This is getting out of hand, Deputy. The HOA president is spreading lies about me, and now I am dealing with vandalism and harassment. Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. I have seen this before with that HOA. They are very aggressive. Document everything and make sure your lawyer knows about it. This could help your case. The temporary restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. In the meantime, I had to keep cutting the lock on the gate every few days because the HOA kept replacing it. Each time I documented everything with photos and videos. Each time they sent me threatening letters about vandalism. It was absurd. The hearing was held before Judge Patricia Carmichael, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had a reputation for not tolerating games. Doug presented our case, showing the recorded easement, the survey, photos of the fence blocking my access, and documentation of my repeated attempts to use my legal right-of-way. The HOA's attorney, a slick guy named Robert Morrison, argued that the easement was subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, and that the HOA had a legitimate interest in controlling access to their community for safety reasons. He also claimed I was being unnecessarily aggressive and could access my property from County Road 12. Judge Carmichael listened to both sides, reviewed the documents, and then looked up with a frown. Mr. Morrison, I have read the easement language. It grants Mr. Zimmerman perpetual ingress and egress along the described road. There's nothing in there about reasonable restrictions or alternative access. Your client has blocked a recorded easement. That is pretty clear-cut to me. Your Honor, my client has significant concerns about liability. If Mr. Zimmerman is driving through a residential community and something happens, the HOA could be held responsible. Then the HOA should not have built a residential community on a road that is subject to someone else's easement, the judge said dryly. I am granting the temporary restraining order. The fence must be removed from the easement area within 48 hours. Mr. Zimmerman is entitled to full use of his easement access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without restriction. We will address the other issues at trial. She banged her gavel. Doug and I walked out of the courthouse and I felt like I could breathe again. That went well, Doug said, but be prepared. They are not going to like this, and things might get worse before they get better. He was right. The HOA removed the fence, but Karen sent another letter to all the homeowners claiming that I had bullied them in court and that they needed to raise HOA fees to pay for legal costs. She conveniently left out the fact that they had illegally blocked my easement in the first place. More harassment followed. Someone filed a false complaint with the county health department claiming I was dumping sewage on my property. An inspector came out, found nothing, and apologized for wasting my time. Another complaint claimed I was running an illegal business, which was also false. Each complaint meant time off work, dealing with inspectors, and more legal fees. Doug filed a motion to add the harassment to our lawsuit and asked for increased damages. They are retaliating against you for exercising your legal rights. That is not okay. As we prepared for trial, Doug deposed several HOA board members, including Karen. Her deposition was a train wreck. She was combative, refused to admit any wrongdoing, and made several statements that contradicted the HOA's legal position. When Doug asked her if she knew about the sewer line on my property before erecting the fence, she said she did. And did you think Mr. Zimmerman might have leverage regarding that sewer line if you cut off his road access? Doug asked. Karen's attorney objected, but the damage was done. Karen had essentially admitted they knew about the sewer issue and tried to bully me anyway. The real bombshell came when Doug deposed the former president of the HOA, a man named Leonard Shaw, who had served from 2020 to 2023. Leonard was in his 70s, retired, and clearly fed up with the drama. "Mr. Shaw, were you aware that the community sewer line crosses Mr. Zimmerman's property without an easement?" Doug asked. "Yes. The developer disclosed it to the board when they turned over control of the HOA. They said it was an oversight and that they had tried to buy an easement from Mr. Zimmerman's predecessor, but the previous owner wanted too much money. The developer figured it would never be an issue since the manholes are hidden." "Did you ever attempt to resolve this issue during your tenure?" "I proposed reaching out to Mr. Zimmerman when he bought the property in 2020 and offering a fair price for an easement. The board voted it down. They said we should wait until he found out about it, if he ever did, and deal with it then. It was stupid, in my opinion. I told them we were sitting on a time bomb." "What happened when you raised concerns?" "Karen and a few other board members said I was being too cautious. They said we had been using the sewer line for years and that created a legal right. I tried to explain that is not how it works. But they would not listen. That is part of why I did not run for re-election. The board became very aggressive and difficult to work with. This testimony was gold. It showed the HOA had knowingly trespassed on my property, ignored legal advice to fix it, and then tried to bully me when I stood up for my rights." As trial approached, Morrison and Chen made a settlement offer. They would pay $10,000 for the sewer easement and legal fees, plus guarantee my road access. Doug and I discussed it over coffee at a diner in Marietta. "It is insulting," I said. "They tried to ruin my life, spread lies about me, and now they want to lowball me? No way." "I agree it is low, but trials are risky. You never know what a jury will do. I want them to face consequences for what they did. This is not just about money. They need to learn they cannot treat people this way." Doug nodded. "Then we go to trial. But let's make a counteroffer. $75,000 for the easement, all legal fees, a written apology published to all homeowners correcting the lies Karen spread, and Karen must resign from the board." "I like it. Send it." They rejected the counteroffer, and we went to trial. The trial lasted 3 days. Doug presented our case methodically, showing the jury the recorded easements, the blocked gate, the photos of harassment, and the deposition testimony from Leonard Shaw. He called me to the stand, and I described the nightmare of dealing with the HOA, the constant complaints, the vandalism, and the stress of being demonized in a community where I had never caused any trouble. The HOA's defense was weak. Morrison tried to argue that I was being unreasonable and vindictive, but it fell flat when Doug showed the timeline. They had blocked my access first, I had responded proportionally, and then they had escalated with harassment. The most dramatic moment came when Doug called Karen to the stand. She was defensive and hostile, refusing to take responsibility for anything. When Doug asked her about the letters she had sent to homeowners describing me as a hostile junkyard operator, she said she was just protecting her community. "Ms. Whitmore, have you ever actually visited Mr. Zimmerman's property?" "No." "So you described it as a junkyard without ever seeing it?" "I saw photos." "Who took those photos?" She hesitated. "I do not recall." Doug pulled out a document. "According to your deposition, you admitted you never saw any photos. You based your description entirely on assumption. Is that correct?" "I was protecting my community," she repeated stubbornly. "By lying about Mr. Zimmerman and encouraging harassment?" Morrison objected, and the judge sustained it, but the point was made. Karen came across as vindictive and reckless. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the foreperson read the verdict. They found in my favor on all counts. The sewer line was trespassing, my easement was absolute, and the HOA had engaged in harassment and retaliation. They awarded me $80,000 for the sewer easement, which was more than I had asked for, plus $75,000 in punitive damages, plus legal fees. Karen went pale when she heard the amount. Several other HOA board members in the courtroom looked shocked. Morrison immediately filed notice of appeal, but Doug told me later that the verdict was solid and unlikely to be overturned. After the trial, things began to calm down. The HOA paid the judgment and granted me a recorded easement for the sewer line. They also sent a letter to all homeowners explaining that there had been a misunderstanding about my property rights and that I was entitled to use the road access. It was not the full apology I had wanted, but it was something. Karen did not resign immediately, but at the next HOA election, she was voted out. Several homeowners had become fed up with her aggressive tactics and the legal bills she had racked up. The new board president, a reasonable guy named Thomas Wu, reached out to me and apologized personally. "Mr. Zimmerman, I want you to know that not everyone in Meadowbrook supported what happened. A lot of us thought Karen was out of control, but she ran the board like a dictatorship. We are trying to change the culture here." "I appreciate that, Thomas. I never wanted to be enemies with my neighbors. I just wanted to be left alone on my property." "Understood. If you ever have any issues in the future, please reach out to me directly. We will work it out like reasonable adults." We shook hands, and I felt like maybe this nightmare was finally over. But there was one more twist. A few weeks after the trial, I received a call from a detective with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office. His name was Detective Warren Briggs, and he wanted to talk to me about the vandalism and harassment I had experienced. "Mr. Zimmerman, we have been investigating some of the incidents that occurred during your dispute with the HOA. We have evidence that Karen Whitmore directly encouraged some of the harassment you experienced." "What kind of evidence?" "Text messages. One of the parents of the teenagers who vandalized your property came forward. Apparently, Karen sent a group text to several families in Meadowbrook encouraging them to make your life difficult. She specifically suggested filing false complaints with the county and implied that vandalism might be justified to protect the community." I sat down, stunned. She actually put that in writing? She did. "We are considering charges for conspiracy to commit harassment and filing false reports. The false county complaints alone are misdemeanors, but encouraging vandalism could be more serious. Would you be willing to cooperate with an investigation?" "Absolutely." Over the next month, Detective Briggs built a case. He interviewed the families Karen had contacted, obtained the text messages, and documented the false complaints. The DA's office decided to charge Karen with 3 counts of filing a false report and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal mischief. Karen tried to fight the charges, claiming she was just protecting her community and that her messages had been taken out of context. But the evidence was overwhelming. Her lawyer eventually negotiated a plea deal. Karen pleaded guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of filing a false report. She was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 100 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the county resources wasted investigating her false complaints. She also had to write me a formal apology letter, which arrived about 6 months after the trial. It was short and clearly written under duress, but I appreciated it nonetheless. "Tai. Dear Mr. Zimmerman, I apologize for my actions during our dispute regarding easement access. My behavior was inappropriate, and I should not have filed false complaints or encouraged others to harass you. I hope we can move forward respectfully. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore." I kept the letter in my files, a reminder of how badly things could go when people let power go to their heads. Life gradually returned to normal. I continued working as a construction supervisor, coming home to my quiet 10 acres each evening. The residents of Meadowbrook Estates got used to seeing my truck drive through their neighborhood, and most of them waved or nodded politely. A few even stopped to chat when they saw me at the local hardware store or coffee shop. Thomas Wu and the new HOA board were reasonable to deal with. When they needed to access the sewer manholes on my property for maintenance, they called ahead and asked permission, which I always granted. In return, they made sure their landscaping crew maintained the easement road, keeping it graded and clear of debris. About a year after the trial, I was working in my barn when I heard a vehicle approaching. It was Thomas in a golf cart, along with another board member named Stephanie Ford. They waved and walked over. "Zachary, do you have a minute?" Thomas asked. "Sure, what is up?" "We wanted to run something by you. The board has been discussing long-term planning, and we want to pave the main roads in Meadowbrook, including the road through your easement. If we do that, it would give you a nice paved road to your property. We wanted to make sure you were okay with that, and see if you had any concerns." I thought about it. A paved road would be nicer than the dirt track, but I did not want to give up any rights. As long as it is understood that I still have full easement rights and you are not expecting me to contribute to the cost, I am fine with it. Actually, it would be an improvement for me. Absolutely. This would be entirely at HOA expense, and your easement rights would not change at all. We just wanted to give you a heads up before we started the project. Then I have no objection. I appreciate you asking. They paved the road that fall, and it was indeed a nice improvement. My truck did not kick up dust anymore, and the ride to my property was smooth and quiet. The legal fees and judgment money helped me make some improvements to my own property. I built a new workshop, upgraded my barn, and put in a proper driveway with landscaping. My property looked better than ever, which I hoped would put to rest any lingering rumors about it being an eyesore. I also started attending the occasional Meadowbrook community event, just to be neighborly. The annual 4th of July barbecue, the Halloween party, things like that. Most people were friendly once they realized I was not the villain Karen had made me out to be. A few even apologized for believing the lies and participating in the harassment. One of those people was Marcus Chen, the teenager who had vandalized my fence. He showed up at my property one Saturday morning with his father, both looking nervous. "Mr. Zimmerman, I am Marcus. I wanted to apologize for spray painting your fence last year. It was stupid, and I'm really sorry. My dad made me get a summer job to pay for damages, and I've been saving up. I have $300 to give you for repairs and to make things right." I looked at the kid. He was maybe 16, clearly embarrassed and sincere. His father stood behind him, arms crossed, making sure his son followed through. "Marcus, I appreciate the apology. That took guts to come here. Tell you what, keep your money. But I want you to do something for me instead." "Anything, sir. I need help cleaning out my barn next weekend. It is about 8 hours of hard work, moving stuff, organizing, sweeping. You willing to do that?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely." Marcus showed up the next Saturday at 8 in the morning and worked his tail off. He was a good kid who had made a mistake, and by the end of the day, we were chatting and joking around. His father came by to pick him up and shook my hand. "Thank you for giving him a chance to make this right," Mr. Chen said. He learned a valuable lesson about listening to adults who do not have his best interests at heart. We all make mistakes. He is a good kid. As time went on, I realized that the whole ordeal, as terrible as it had been, actually taught me something valuable. I had always avoided conflict, moved to the country specifically to be left alone. But sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when it is hard and expensive and stressful. If I had backed down when Karen first blocked my road, I would have lost my access and probably my property value. Worse, the HOA would have continued to bully anyone who did not fall in line. By fighting back, I not only protected my own rights, but also sent a message that the HOA could not act with impunity. The new board was more careful, more respectful of property rights, and more willing to work with people instead of steamrolling them. Several other property owners in the area thanked me for taking a stand, saying they had been worried about similar issues. Doug and I stayed in touch, and he occasionally sent me news articles about other HOA disputes. It was shocking how common these situations were. HOAs foreclosing on homes over trivial violations, fining people into bankruptcy for having the wrong color curtains, banning American flags or holiday decorations. Some of it seemed absolutely insane. "Why do people buy into HO as if they are this bad?" I asked Doug over beers one evening. "Most people do not read the fine print. They see a nice neighborhood with amenities and do not realize they are giving up a lot of freedom. And most HOAs are fine, just boring administrative stuff. But every now and then, you get someone like Karen who sees it as a power trip, and that is when things go sideways." Well, I am glad I learned my lesson. No more HOA properties for me. Smart man. 2 years after the trial, I got a surprise letter in the mail. It was from a law firm in Atlanta, but not Morrison and Chen. This was from a different firm representing Prestige Homes, the original developer of Meadowbrook Estates. The letter explained that Prestige Homes had been sued by the HOA for the sewer easement issue and other construction defects. As part of that lawsuit, they had settled and were now reaching out to me. Since the sewer line issue had originated with their mistake, They wanted to offer me additional compensation and make sure there were no further claims against them. They offered me $25,000 in exchange for a release of any claims I might have against Prestige Homes related to the sewer line. I called Doug, and he reviewed the offer. It is a decent offer, Zachary. You already got paid by the HOA, so this is essentially extra money. The release is pretty standard. Unless you have some other claim against the developer I do not know about, I would take it. I do not have any other issues with them. It was the HOA that caused all the problems. Then take the money. Think of it as a bonus for all the trouble you went through. I signed the release and deposited the check. Combined with the trial judgment, I had received over $180,000 total. I used some of it to pay off my mortgage, invested the rest, and felt genuinely blessed that things had worked out. Life settled into a comfortable routine. I enjoyed my work, my property, and my privacy. The drama with the HOA became a story I told at parties, usually to people's disbelief. Most folks could not believe an HOA would be that aggressive or that someone would actually text encouragement to harass a neighbor. But I had the court documents and news articles to prove it. The local newspaper had covered the trial, and the story had even been picked up by a few regional outlets. For a brief moment, I was a minor celebrity as the guy who beat the crazy HOA. I did not love the attention, but I appreciated that it raised awareness about HOA abuses. Several people reached out to me for advice when they faced their own HOA issues. I always told them the same thing. Document everything, know your rights, and do not be afraid to get a lawyer. Most HOAs will back down when confronted with actual legal consequences. One woman from a subdivision in Roswell called me after reading about my case. Her HOA was trying to foreclose on her house over $1,500 in fines for having a vegetable garden in her front yard. I connected her with Doug, and he was able to stop the foreclosure and negotiate a settlement. She got to keep her garden, and the HOA agreed to revise their rules to allow front yard gardens as long as they were maintained. Stories like that made me feel like the fight had been worth it. I had not just won my own case, I had helped create precedent and awareness that empowered other people to stand up for themselves. As I sit here now, 5 years after that fence first blocked my road, I can honestly say I am grateful for the whole experience. I learned a lot about property law, about standing up for myself, and about the importance of good neighbors. My relationship with the Meadowbrook Estates community is cordial, sometimes even friendly. Thomas Wu and I occasionally grab coffee and talk about community issues, and I've been invited to serve on an advisory committee for rural properties near the subdivision. My 10 acres are peaceful and beautiful, my home is paid off, and I have a smooth paved road to get here. The sewer line runs underneath my back pasture, properly documented with an easement and regular maintenance access. Everything is legal, recorded, and settled. Karen Whitmore moved away about 3 years ago. I heard through the grapevine that she and her husband divorced, and she relocated somewhere in Florida. I do not know the details, and I do not really care. I hope she learned something from the experience, but that is between her and her conscience. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA still exists, of course, but it operates very differently now. The board is more transparent, more collaborative, and more respectful of individual property rights. They focus on maintaining common areas and organizing community events, not on power trips and harassment. Several residents have told me it is a much nicer place to live now. As for me, I'm just Zachary Zimmerman, a construction supervisor who lives on 10 acres outside Marietta, Georgia. I have a legal easement for my road, a legal easement for someone else's sewer, and a lot of stories about why you should always read your property survey carefully. I still drive through Meadowbrook Estates twice a day, every day. Most people wave, some stop to chat. A few even bring me baked goods around the holidays, which is nice. We are all just neighbors trying to live our lives, and that is exactly how it should be. The whole experience taught me that property rights matter, legal documents matter, and standing up for yourself matters. It also taught me that most people are reasonable if you give them a chance, but some people need to face consequences before they learn to respect others. I never wanted to be in a legal battle. I never wanted to be the center of community drama. I just wanted to drive home to my house on my private property and be left alone. But sometimes life throws you challenges, and you have to decide whether to roll over or fight back. I chose to fight back, and I won. not just in court, but in creating a better situation for everyone involved. The HOA is better, the community is better, and I am definitely better off than I would have been if I had just accepted that fence blocking my road. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, whether it is an HOA, a neighbor, or any other bully trying to take your rights, remember this story. Know your rights, document everything, get a good lawyer, and do not back down. Justice might take time and it might be expensive, but it is worth it. And always, always check your property survey. You never know what easements might be running through your land or what access rights you might have that someone else wants to take away. Those lines on a map are not just abstract concepts. They represent real legal rights that are worth defending. As the sun sets over my property this evening, I'm sitting on my back porch with a cold beer, watching deer graze in my pasture. Life is good. The road is open. The sewer works. And I have peace of mind knowing that I stood up for myself and won. That fence blocking my road 5 years ago was the worst thing and the best thing that ever happened to me. Worst because of all the stress and conflict it created. Best because it taught me valuable lessons and resulted in financial security I would not have had otherwise. Sometimes the biggest obstacles in life turn out to be the best opportunities in disguise. You just have to be willing to face them head on and see them through to the end. I did, and I am grateful for it every single day.